Era of abusing the funds of the Social Security is a thing of the past. The registration is very important for your future well-being. Employers, it is their right to be registered on either the Federated Pension Scheme or the National Provident Fund, plus the Industrial Injuries Compensation Fund.
And also, when you have that, peace of mind, you own a plot, with Social Security, and then, they will build, a sizable houses, and then today, most civil servants are living with their families, on these mortgages. So that's how, we are able to improve the lives of Gambians.
Apart from the central bank, the Social Security is the biggest financial institution in the Gambia.
The Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation has contributed a lot to the economic advancement of this country.
Social Security was established, in 1981, and then it was, established through an act of Parliament.
Social Security is to provide social protection for our members at the age of retirement. That is the benefit, the idea of establishing Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. Because like what they realized was, during there was a pension scheme called the 1950 Federated Pension Scheme for civil service. Now later the government realized that there is a need. What about those who are working on the private? They are not covered under this 1950 scheme. How can we include them so that they can also, benefit something at the age of retirement? That in fact came up with the idea of establishing Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. So there was an act of Parliament which was enacted in 1981, but it came into force in January 1982, so that it can cover those working at the private enterprise, so that at the time of their retirement, at the age of 60, you understand, they have to get something that they can rely on, you understand, to provide social protection for them. So that was the reason why it was supposed to be when you retire at the age of 60. But later there was a problem in 1985 when there was this redundancy, mass redundancy. They have to come up with, a service called, a benefit called redundancy benefit. So that those who are redundant, because of the ERP, something like the Economic Recovery Program, a lot of people were redundant, so that they'll be able to pay them something to protect their to provide social protection for them.
The mandate of the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation is guided by the SSHFC Act of 2015, which mandates us to provide social security to the membership. How do we provide social security to the membership? It is through separate funds. The first fund is the Federated Pension Scheme. That is where most state-owned enterprises, staff members contribute through, where you contribute, the employer contributes 15% of the employee's gross earnings. That is the Federated Pension Scheme. Then we also have the National Provident Fund, where all private sector employers register, wherein they contribute 10% of each employee's earnings, and then the employee will contribute 5%, making a 15% of the basic salary of each employee. That's the National Provident Fund. Then you have the Industrial Injuries Compensation Fund, wherein each employer contributes $15 is maximum amount per employee for industrial injuries that employees have during work. So those are the three funds. However, we also have a housing fund where we are required to provide affordable housing to the general populace. So that's our mandate as far as social security is concerned.
Because all these schemes we run here, there is the Housing Finance Fund, the National Provident Fund, and the Pension Scheme, and Housing Finance Fund as well. So stakeholders, the customer needs to know how we function as an organization. And that is what our focus is mainly on. We create a media plan, and we come up with the communication strategy, a document we have developed, the communication strategy, which is mainly categorizing our members or customers into various groups. And each of these groups are targeted differently because they all have different characteristics. And so this strategy is there, and our media team follows this strategy, and ensuring that our target approach is very successful in what we do. So these are some of what we have in place, some of the approach we take currently to communicate.
I'm the Director of Research and Policy Planning, and the main mandate of that department is to ensure that all registrable employees within the country are registered in the formal sector. For now, at the end of every 3 years, we are required to do evaluation of the schemes. That is the National Provident Fund and the Federated Pension Scheme. So every 3 years, that valuation is done. So basically, these are the areas that we normally handle as a mandate of that department.
Complaint could be received via the social media platform. For example, Facebook. The communication unit normally manages the social media platform and all the communication channels on mode. So customers, during our interaction with them on these platforms, or they may lodge a complaint or raise concerns. And that is documented. We have a complaint log where it is documented. And once documented, it is now given to the customer service unit, which is actually the custodian of this handle the managed complaints. We engage the relevant department. So if it's about housing, we see the housing director. If it's about payment of benefits, we see the Department of Operations. We liaise with them and channel the complaint to them, and then they will advise us on the solutions to take, and we then go and communicate that to the customers. So we ensure that the complaint is well tracked and is resolved at the earliest time possible, so that the customer is made aware and instill confidence in them that we are serving their best interest.
If you are a Gambian of 18 years up to age 60, you are working in an establishment which is registrable, registered with the AG chambers, you should register with Social Security. Whether in the private sector for the Provident Fund, and also those working in the public enterprises within the same age bracket too, they also have to register.
You have the different type of pensions. You have voluntary retirement, normal retirement, you have survivors, you have ill health, on marriage grounds. Those are the type of benefits we have on the pensions. Now what we do is we've sent a letter to all the FPS members. Like at the time of submitting their claims, they should make sure they attach all the necessary documents required in order to facilitate the payment of those benefits. Because sometimes you'll see they will complete the SS2 form, which is the termination form. So once you submit the termination form, that will tell us that that individual has retired or his service has been terminated.
Now the National Provident Fund basically is a kind of savings for the members. But however, the 10% paid by the employer is not deducted from this employee's salary. So it's an additional amount that may be free for the staff. So he pays 5% of his income. The employer top it up with 10%, and that is paid to Social Security. Now, upon retirement, what happens is that is lump sum is paid to the employer upon retirement, and then that's a project 59 comes in again. So when the person is 59, in the 59 years, the age 59, we make sure we complete all their benefits so that when they turn 60, that is paid. That's how the National Provident Fund basically works.
Well, there's a scheme called the Industrial Injury Compensation Scheme. That one you have to be an injured workman. If you are working, you sustain injury as a result of the work, you'll be entitled to compensation. And also, if you close work, you are covered by 2 hours from your office to your home, or from your home to your office 2 hours, unless there are certain problems that are unavoidable. For example, the road is blocked, maybe the person is going, you divert your way. But if you take a straight way and you sustain injury or accident, you'll be compensated. But if you do it at your own discretion, that you are going to Brekama, you say, let me go to Bakau, and you have accident at Bakau. So that means you have deviated. Yes. So you will not be eligible. And under that scheme also, you need a medical board report that is going to determine the eligibility of your disability. So they will tell us what percentage you are disabled, then we'll pay based on that percentage. The payment is based on the medical report advice. Yeah. But Labor Department will only do the compilation of the document and send them here, and we process.
The Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation is directed through the board of directors. They develop policies. So the managing director reports to the board, who is appointed by the Ministry of Finance following the approval of the President. So we are under the line Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. The membership of the board, you have the chairman who is appointed by the President, but the others are through their various membership. You have a representative of the Federated Pension Scheme, appointed by the Federation pension members. You have a representative of the National Provident Fund, also elected by the NPF members. You have the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government, and then the Managing Director of the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. The challenges were mainly, I think, perceived threats received by employees. I think there was general perception that there would be huge redundancies. And then also another challenge that I found here was division between staff, mainly as a result of, I think, the perceived threats of redundancy. That was one. And also there was this feeling that the benefits that staff used to enjoy, or the perks, I think I would call it perks, that staff used to enjoy, is now being, in one way or another, removed from them. So that was, there was a feeling of that also, unfairness in court, or the general feeling that their livelihoods were at risk of being removed from them. Yeah, those were the main challenges. And of course, the number one challenge was the financial situation of the corporation, which, to be frank, my predecessor had started revamping with a view to ensuring a better direction for the corporation.
In implementing these mandates of the department, in terms of registration, for instance, you know, employers in general don't usually want to pay. So somebody who doesn't want to pay will always try to dodge the law, because you will always want to evade registrations. And when you don't register, you cannot pay contribution. When you are registering, we require you to submit to us a passport size photo, a birth certificate. If you do not have a birth certificate, you have to give us a national identity card. Or if you do not have any of these, we will still ask you to go to an alcalo, get a document from the alcalo to attest that this is the year you were born, and then the CFO will have to endorse that. So that one is also sufficient, it's also acceptable. So these documents, once they are not gathered, when you are coming to claim, we'll make sure that you get everything sorted before you can proceed to process your claim.
Sometimes they have different names, different age. You see somebody will be working there, the employer, the record he has at the employment there with the employer is different from the one we have. The employer will retire him. When he comes here, we realize that he is less than, he should go in the next 1 year. So we have to write to them and say, no, as far as our records are concerned, this man or this member is not due for retirement. So we have to write to them and they have to reinstate them.
There was a time we even had a policy to require all employers to make sure that any employee who is working and is registered, they code their social security numbers, or if they are not registered, we will not accept their payment. But we have since reversed this policy because some of them will not just even come to pay at all. They will prefer to stay, or they will go and just deposit the money in the bank and just say, this is for social security, they go. That one was creating more problems for us. So we have since reversed that. And we have since asked the inspectors to be more vigorous in the field so that they make sure that all employees who are employed within the establishments are all registered. Because if they don't come to pay, that means they either constrained financially or they simply just don't want to pay. But that does not mean that they will not be pursued. Because if you do not pay, we have to initiate legal actions against you. And in the process, you must have to pay.
We call them compliance inspectors. They normally follow up the payment. Yeah. But sometimes when the person is highly indebted, so you follow, you write sometime before you are done, he close. Or maybe if he's a foreigner, he will leave the country. So how do you recover it when the man has already packed up and go?
So that is also another area. And sometimes you could also have logistic problems here and there. When vehicles are down, you will not be able to go out in the field, or maybe even in the rainy seasons when the place is wet and the inspectors' movement will be limited.
It is always difficult. Sometimes the members, the employers are not paying. So once they are not paying, that will also derail the claim process. That's why you can see some claims are filed because the contribution areas, especially pension, when there is an arrears for maybe 2 months or 3 months, you cannot process it. You have to file the claim and pursue the payment. After when the payment is made, then you process the claim. So those are some of the challenges. So as a result of that, the office decided to establish a social security tribunal that will also make sure that those who are defaulted, they are taken to court to make sure they pay contributions for us to be able to pay the claimants. But still now, we are still fighting very hard to make sure that people comply. But even though it is also difficult because we have no control over the courts. And the other challenges we also have, like the members will bring their claims, while the employer has not agreed to give them termination letters. Termination letter is a requirement when you are claiming under the National Provident Fund. So once you don't have the termination letter under OWB, we cannot pay. Sometimes we have to resort to writing to them or taking them to court.
When you close down institutions, sometimes it does not seem to make any economic sense, because in the sense that when the institution closes, the people who are working within that establishment will be off. They will not have any employment. So you are creating more burden instead for the government. So that is also another area. So we do not tend to be moving along those lines, trying to get some sort of powers from the government to be able to close institutions. We do not move along those lines. So what we intend to do, what we do is, we will initiate the legal actions against you in the courts, and when the court passes judgment, that is what is normally followed. But we do not use the route of the GRA, even though we should be collaborating with GRA in the sense that we have what we call a clearance certificate system, which is all institutions that are registered every year. When you are renewing your business, you have to make sure that all areas with social security and registration is completed. But for them to implement that, they will say they have targets to meet. They cannot do that for us. So the clearance system is not a strong system. You understand? That is why it is difficult for us to follow the path of GRA. We can equally require government to give us the powers to be able to close institutions, but we are not working along those paths.
We have a regional office that is at Basse, but for them, they can only receive the claim and send it here. But the process of benefit is not decentralized. It's centralized. It's done in the headquarters here. So let's maybe in future management will think of it and then try to decentralize the service. So that is also another challenge we have for people in the provinces. Normally, the projects are intended for people who need the house. There is the need, what we call the need and the affordability. So that is why they subject them to interview, whether you have already housed or you are not yet housed. The mode of payment, the period of payment is very long, maybe 8 years, over 8 years. So over 8 years you pay on mortgage, and some people, if you need to pay that mortgage, is a problem, but they need it. So those are the people you see they cannot apply because they will think of how to get it, how to get the money to pay. So these are the problems. Some people also are rejected. They will think, no, I'm rejected because they are not fair. Probably they look at your earnings because you have to tell us. If they are not convinced that you'll be able to sustain the mortgage, there's no need for them to give you. So if they also realize that you have how many houses, or you have a house, but you can still afford it, that would not be fair to give it to you and deny others who need it and they can afford it.
Sometimes, you will give, these mortgages to people, and then down the line, that's human nature. Some people will default, maybe circumstances beyond their control. We are still grappling, with that challenge to see how best we can overcome it, but it's very, very difficult. So these are challenges. So if people default, for example, we know that this person doesn't have the capacity to pay at all. We go in for repossession. What we normally do, we need to check your accounts, and then we'll notify you. Even before we repossess, we have to give you at least first warning, second warning, and then third warning and final warning. Then we'll inform you that you have to settle your debt within this period, this specified period of time. Failing which your plot will be repossessed.
The mode of communication is also important.
We've realized such based on our communication via the Facebook page and the WhatsApp group, and also calls we get from the customers. Sometimes we see that there's some misconception out there. So from that, we try to devise means of reaching the customer. But some of the challenges we might face will be along there will possibly be a breakdown of communication along the way. For example, the government did an announcement for their own pension fund, their pensioners. And then a customer called us thinking that it was from us. So we had to make it, put it right as no, it's actually from the government, not from us. So those may be some of the things. We may also relay a message, and some people may hear the message, trying to extend the message, but there may be error along the way. So what they may extend may not be accurate. So now that's why we create a forum. We have a customer forum and pensioners forum whereby people are allowed to join, and then we meet them directly. So that does help to mitigate or reduce the breakdown of communication along the way.
When somebody works and retires, it should not be a burden to the government. So social protection comes to reduce that burden on the government, because when you retire, you are given a pension at the end of every month. You are some sort of, reducing the burden from the government, or you are paid a lump sum. You can go and start some sort of a business, at least for the rest of your life, But if this doesn't happen, it's going to be more difficult on the government to be able to support all these families, because you have to build all homes for all people, and you cannot do all this. But if they have a pension, the little they gather, if even it's a lump sum, they can build some mud house, at least go and stay there. They will not require government to be feeding them and all sorts of things. Even though we are currently limited only to the formal sector, because what we provide, the protection we provide, is only to the formal sector. The formal sector has not come, because the law is not there for us to cover the informal sector.
We have provided, more than 7,000 housing scheme to Gambians. And then today, Gambians are living comfortably, because our layouts are not just like any other layouts, because at least we make sure that every compound has water and electricity, and then also in terms of the road networks, we create better road networks. And then it's like the middle income, most of these middle income families, most of them are residing in our estates. And how we contribute to national development is like we are trying to bring the housing deficit of the country I mean, even if we cannot, eliminate, but, to reduce it, to a greater extent. And then this is also, aligned to the national development blueprint of this country. So definitely, we have contributed, a lot, in terms of, national development.
Because we believe that value is best when it's co-created. So you invite your stakeholders, partner with them, share ideas, and you create value. And in that way, your service will be best adapted to the needs and requirements, rather than doing all along and alone, thinking that what you are doing is right. So whatever we do, we try to get stakeholders on board, and that has really helped us to sort of assure them and also give us the edge in terms of delivering services that is acceptable to them.
I think my biggest achievement is I have brought in stability in the corporation. I think without doubt. I remember we used to be in this social media each day, on either the radio or the Facebook or Freedom newspaper or other social media activities. However, that has reduced a lot. I think we have room to go, but there is stability now, especially at the level of management and staff relationship.
Now, to decongest the offices and to promote social distancing, we had to partner with Yona Financial Services to help us pay our pensioners close to their home. So this was mainly in the interest of the pensioners to make sure that when travel distance is reduced, and we also decongest the building as well. So that has really paid off, and that continues to run today. And in terms of the pensioners, they benefit from, for example, ease of access to their payments, so they don't have to travel all the way to Banjul or Bakau or our payment points. So now it's decentralized, and this has really added value to the service. And pensioners have given a lot of positive feedback on this.
And on the finances also, we have continued to increase the income of the corporation and also increase the assets base of the corporation. As I mentioned, the corporation income increased from 300 million to over 400 million between 2018 and 2019, then to about 500 million in 2020. And the assets base also has also increased along those lines. We moved from about $4 billion in 2018 to about 5 billion, actually 5 billion in 2019, up to now $7 billion in 2020. That shows that the assets base is also increasing, and you will all recall that in 2014 there was an actuarial valuation. The actuarial valuation actually is we are required to do that by the act, where the assets of the company is compared to the liabilities, mainly the pensions of the members, to make sure that there is sustainability in the contributions being paid. So we do that. We are mandated to do that every 3 years. In 2014, results showed that the funds were in deficit by over $500 million. That dropped to only about $29 million deficit also in 2017. There will be another one as of December 2020 for a new valuation, and we are sure that the funds would move to positive also. Most of the income comes through contributions made by members in the various funds, as I explained, the Industrial Injuries Compensation Fund, the National Provident Fund, mostly private sector employers, and the Federated Pension Scheme for the state-owned enterprises mostly. That is one form, but however, a major contribution of our income is also through the investments that we make. You should know that apart from the central bank, the Social Security is the biggest financial institution in the Gambia. So we have investments in banks and shares in banks. We also have investments in treasury bills. We hold billions of dollars in treasury bills. We also hold billions in the bonds. So those are all yield earning investments. So it's not only through contributions, but we also have returns through our investments in equity and debt. Equity are the investments through shares, whereas that are the investments that we make through bonds and other investments like treasury bills. We are guided by our principles, and we have a board of directors who would approve any major investments that we are making. We have both an investment unit in-house to appraise the investments to be made, checking the returns for those investments and how secure are those investments to be made. After the investment unit clears it, then the board of directors would review the case and then give approval for any major investments. Those, I think for the GTSC and the Ozone Bay hotels and the Sun Beach Hotel, they are 100% owned equity investments of the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. We want to support government in the infrastructure development of the country, so our investment in GTSC to improve on the transportation infrastructure is one of that. The support in infrastructure as far as hotels are concerned is the Ozone Bay Hotel and the Sun Beach Hotel. However, I'm sure the GNPC explanation made was the investment in Gambia Food and Feeds Industries. That one was made jointly with GNPC and the Gambia Ports Authority. Although the Social Security is the majority shareholder, and for the Gambia Food and Feeds Industries, the investment is to improve on the agricultural value chain. It's for both rice production and a feed mill facility. It is at Kamalo on the Banjul-Serekunda Highway. So we are working on re-engineering the place, improving on the infrastructure, and but being led by private sector operators, so that we as equity investors would leave it to the private sector to build, operate, and hand back to the shareholders. We make investments in projects where we have adequate returns. The returns, the funds are not the government funds. The funds are owned by the members of the Social Security. So whatever investments we make have to give us returns. And not only the returns, but we also need the security of those investments. Because if you make investments and you have returns of, let's say, 20%, but you lose your original equity invested, that is of no use. So you should get your equity, should be maintained, the equity invested, and you have returns on top of that. So wherever investments are made, that is what we look for. So in case of road projects, for example, how Social Security can support that project would be through infrastructure bonds, which we are currently participating in. Government would make a request for hundreds of millions of dollars through the central bank infrastructure bond or treasury bill investments when they need more monies. So through those investments of ours, they can use those monies to improve on the national infrastructure. But we do not invest directly in road construction, for example. It can be done through infrastructure bonds, through the central bank, which we participate with any other institution, private sector. That's how these investments are made.
Now, Social Security is a very major institution in the country in terms of national development, because one, Social Security is very central. And if you look at the NDP, the National Development Plan, you see that Social Security and social protection is a key component. And then what we do, all our functions, primarily is about offering social protection to the members. You see, and look at infrastructure-wise as well. The NDP talk of infrastructure. But we also have, as I say, we're the largest real estate institution in the country. So far, we build a lot of infrastructure. We also, GTSC, which is the largest road transport company in the country, is owned by Social Security as well. So, and they have the largest road infrastructure as well, which is also this part of the, and most of the investment, if you track the investment, you see that Social Security has done a lot for GTSC. Ozone Bay as well, again, owned by Social Security, and we have investment in a lot of other key institutions. And all this has led to creation of employment and then building of more infrastructure as well, and the like. So these are some of the values I think we should continue to offer to terms of national and development as well. And most of the institutions, if you look at our relationship with the government as well, loans to other institutions, members institutions, or partner institutions too, has really helped them to also go out and meet their own objective or strategy. So we are contributing a lot in that domain.